When the hospital elevator doors slid open, the world did not stop. People still breathed, lights still hummed, time still moved forward. Only my life didn't. The first thing I saw was my husband's hand, intertwined with another woman's fingers, not loosely, not awkwardly, but with the easy familiarity of something practiced, repeated, normalized. Then I noticed her belly. Round, full, heavy with life, 7 months pregnant. I stepped inside the elevator without making a sound. Our eyes met. Exactly 1 second. That single second was enough to drain every drop of color from his face. His pupils dilated, his jaw stiffened, and his shoulders locked as if his body had entered survival mode before his mind could catch up. The pregnant woman turned to him, her voice gentle, curious, untouched by suspicion. "Who is she?" My husband didn't answer. He didn't blink. He didn't breathe properly. He stood there like a man staring at an executioner, as if the calm, quiet woman he had lived with for 8 years might suddenly detonate and turn this metal box into a grave. But I didn't scream. I didn't ask questions. I didn't cry. I simply stood there. My name is Eleanor Wright. I am 36 years old. I teach piano in Boston. For 8 years, I had been married to Nathan Wright, a man everyone described as dependable, gentle, and trustworthy. That afternoon, I wasn't at Massachusetts General Hospital for myself. I wasn't sick. I wasn't injured. I hadn't planned to be there at all. I came because my mother-in-law had collapsed at home after a sudden drop in blood pressure and was admitted to the internal medicine department. My father-in-law had called Nathan first, once, twice, 3 times, no answer. Finally, his shaking voice came through my phone instead. "Eleanor, can you go to the hospital? I can't reach Nathan." So I left my piano lesson early, apologized to my students, grabbed my bag, and rushed across the city with the familiar mindset of a woman who always showed up for her husband, for his father, for his family. Even though for months Nathan had felt distant in a way I couldn't explain, emotionally absent, easily irritated, always busy. I reached the 7th floor, signed extra admission papers, picked up a light meal for my mother-in-law, and headed back toward the elevator. I had no idea that seconds later, the woman I used to be would cease to exist. When the elevator doors opened, Nathan was already inside, with her. She looked young, mid-20s maybe, her belly pushed gently against a loose sweater. One hand rested on the small of Nathan's back, fingers curved there naturally, as if that place belonged to her. Nathan's hands trembled so badly that when he tried to press the floor button, he pressed the wrong one, twice. The air felt thick, pressurized. I could hear his breathing, short, uneven, panicked. This was the same man who hadn't answered his father's frantic calls, the same man who claimed he had meetings all afternoon. When the elevator reached the 3rd floor, the doors opened. I stepped out. No confrontation, no drama, no tears. I turned back only once. The look I gave him said everything I didn't need to speak. As the doors slid shut on his frozen face, something inside me settled into a terrifying calm. I understood with absolute certainty that my visit to the hospital had only been fate's excuse. What I had truly come to witness was the slow rot inside my marriage. That night when I walked back into our house, the warm yellow lights felt foreign. The walls that once felt safe now felt like they were watching me. Nathan arrived 10 minutes after I did, breathless, rushed, like a man escaping a crime scene. Before I could even hang up my coat, he started talking. "You misunderstood. She's a client. I was just helping her with insurance paperwork." I looked at him, calm, unmoving. That calm convinced him I hadn't put the pieces together yet. Relief crossed his face. He exhaled and slipped effortlessly into blame. "You're always too sensitive, and why didn't you tell me earlier that your mom was in the hospital? I should have gone first." I stayed silent as he rebuilt a version of reality where he was still the good husband, the devoted son. Then he grabbed his keys. "I need to go see my mom now," he said hurriedly, trying to repair his image. I nodded, handed him the keys. The moment the door closed behind him, I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and logged into iCloud, something he had always assumed I never paid attention to. The house was silent after Nathan left. Not peaceful, not calm. It was the kind of silence that feels like the air itself is holding its breath. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. My hands didn't shake. That frightened me more than panic ever could. Somewhere deep inside, a switch had flipped. Emotion stepped aside. Precision stepped in. I logged into iCloud. Nathan always assumed I never touched it. He believed I lived only in sheet music, lesson plans, and quiet routines. That assumption would cost him everything. I clicked Restore Deleted Messages, Last 30 Days. The screen paused. Then the messages began to appear, one after another. Doctor confirmations, appointment reminders, specialist referrals, all labeled vaguely, all deliberately deleted. My heartbeat slowed as I began matching dates. Ultrasound, Tuesday afternoon. Blood work, Friday morning. Prenatal consultation, 2 weeks later. Every appointment lined up perfectly with the days Nathan had claimed he was out of town, working late, or meeting an important client. It wasn't a suspicion anymore. It was a schedule. I opened our joint bank account next. The transactions loaded slowly, like they were giving me time to prepare. They shouldn't have. There it was. Harborview Women's Health Group. Once, twice, 4 times. Over the past 2 months. The exact clinic logo I had seen on the folder in his hands inside the elevator. I stared at the screen, my fingers slowly going cold. This wasn't just an affair. This was investment. I created a new folder on my desktop. Case Study, The Fall of a Husband. Phase 1, Documentation. Every screenshot went inside, every invoice, every timestamp. I worked methodically, like someone studying a subject she intended to master. When Nathan came home later that night, his face showed visible relief. He truly believed the crisis had been diffused. I asked only one question. "Is your mother okay?" He nodded quickly. Hope flickered in his eyes. I smiled faintly and returned to my desk. He had no idea that while he exhaled believing he was safe, I was already building the timeline of his collapse. The next morning, after Nathan left for work with an unusually light step, I made a phone call. Lydia Grant, my closest friend. She worked in the billing department at Massachusetts General Hospital. Lydia was the kind of woman who didn't ask unnecessary questions. When I said, "Lydia, I need your help," she closed her office door before I finished the sentence. I told her about the elevator, about the pregnant woman, about the paperwork. 30 seconds later, her voice changed. "Eleanor, Nathan Wright is listed as a secondary insurance holder for a pregnant patient." I leaned back in my chair. "Go on." Her voice dropped lower. "The file notes say partner accompanied every visit. Ultrasounds, blood tests, fetal heart monitoring. Every single one. Every appointment he told me he was busy." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I opened my laptop and began downloading. Hospital bills, insurance documents, verification timestamps. I plugged in a USB drive and saved everything, locking the folder with a 16-character password. Phase 1 was complete. That evening, my phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. "Working late tonight. Unexpected meeting." I stared at the message for a long time before opening the attachment Lydia had sent earlier. Clara Bennett, prenatal schedule. Friday, 3:30 p.m., third trimester ultrasound. The same evening Nathan claimed he'd be working late. I scrolled further. 8 prenatal appointments. All of them aligned perfectly with nights he was out of town with clients or traveling for work. 8 times. Not a single overlap, not a single believable coincidence. The pieces from the past 2 months began snapping together. Deleted messages, unfamiliar charges, perfume on his shirts that didn't belong to me. I added a final line to the timeline. Work trip equals prenatal appointment. When that sentence appeared on my screen, something inside me hardened. This was no longer intuition. This was evidence. Cold, precise, unavoidable. That afternoon, Nathan left the house again, claiming he needed to prepare for an upcoming meeting. I waited exactly 10 minutes after the door closed. Then I made another call. Marcus Hale. Private investigator, Boston-based, specialized in infidelity cases where proof didn't show up willingly. I sent him 3 things: Nathan's full name, his phone number, the last sentence Nathan had spoken before leaving the house. He replied with 6 words. Give me 3 days. He didn't need 3. 2 days later, my inbox chimed. 1 email, 1 attachment. A photograph. Nathan entering an apartment building in Inman Square at 10:47 p.m. The date stamped across the corner burned itself into my memory. 3 months ago, the night he told me he had to meet an important client because it was the only time they were free. In the photo, Clara opened the door for him. The hallway light spilled across their faces. Not the light of business, the light of intimacy. Marcus didn't stop there. A second photo followed. Taken 2 Saturdays ago, the same day Nathan told me he was playing golf with coworkers. In this one, he was carrying an infant car seat, the kind people buy when they're preparing for a baby. My stomach dropped as if my body had plunged into ice water. I remembered watching him leave the house that morning in a polo shirt, believing him completely. The third photo arrived last, taken 1 week earlier. Nathan standing outside the same apartment door, pressing the doorbell repeatedly, irritation etched across his face. Clara opened the door slightly, hair in a loose bun, one hand resting on her belly, fatigue written into her posture. Marcus added a short audio file. Clara's voice. If Ethan finds out, everything will fall apart. Ethan. A name I hadn't heard before. Marcus added one final line beneath the attachments. She's not legally divorced from her former fiancé. Doesn't look like your husband knows that. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I created a new folder. Phase 2, Hidden Residence. Every photo, every timestamp, every audio clip. Dragged inside. Slowly. Carefully. Like removing shards of glass from my own chest just to see them clearly. That night, Nathan texted again. Meeting's late. Don't wait up. I didn't reply. There was no need. He believed I was still confused, still uncertain, still behind. And that belief would make him careless. I didn't confront Nathan. That was the first mistake people always made, believing the truth demanded immediate noise. It didn't. The truth worked better when it was silent. I waited. I watched. I learned. Nathan grew careless in the way only confident liars do. He started leaving his phone face up, stopped deleting messages immediately, assumed I had accepted his version of reality. I played my role perfectly. I cooked. I asked about his day. I smiled when appropriate. And every night when he slept, I opened his laptop. That's where I found it. A draft email titled, "Dependent Coverage Update, Urgent." It wasn't sent yet. The recipient line contained the name of his company's HR manager. The attachment, an insurance form. He had listed Clara Bennett as a domestic partner, not me. The effective date was scheduled for next Monday, meaning one thing: he was planning to remove me, quietly, legally, without warning. I took screenshots of everything, forwarded copies to my encrypted drive. Then I restored the file exactly as it was. Nathan never noticed. The next morning, I visited Harborview Women's Health Group, not as Eleanor Wright, the betrayed wife, but as Eleanor Wright, the concerned insurance holder. I dressed professionally, calm, neutral. At the front desk, I smiled and said, "I believe there's been a billing discrepancy on my policy." They asked for ID. I handed it over. 2 minutes later, a supervisor joined us. Her expression shifted from polite to cautious as she reviewed the file. "There appears to be a conflict," she said slowly. I nodded. "Yes, that's why I'm here." She turned the screen slightly toward me. Primary partner, Nathan Wright. Secondary partner, Clara Bennett. Under relationship status, domestic partner, shared residence. My pulse remained steady. "I don't live with Clara Bennett," I said. The supervisor frowned. "The records show shared utility documentation." I slid the investigator's photos across the counter. "That address," I said quietly, "belongs to her, not to my husband." Silence. The supervisor excused herself. She returned 10 minutes later with the clinic's compliance officer. When he read the file, his jaw tightened. "This constitutes insurance fraud," he said flatly. I didn't react. I only asked one question. "How do you usually proceed?" He answered without hesitation. "Internal review, employer notification, coverage suspension pending investigation." I thanked him and stood. As I turned to leave, he added, "If the child is not biologically his, this becomes significantly worse." I smiled for the first time that day. That afternoon, I called Ethan. Marcus had provided his number. I didn't introduce myself. I simply said, "You deserve to know the truth." There was silence on the line, then anger, then disbelief, then exhaustion. Ethan said finally, "She told me Nathan was helping her financially. I didn't know he thought the baby was his." I closed my eyes. Neither of them knew they were standing on opposite sides of the same lie. We agreed to one thing: a DNA test. Quiet, private, unavoidable. Nathan came home late that night. Too late. I was sitting at the kitchen table, my laptop open, the photos arranged neatly on the screen, the insurance form highlighted in red, the address circled in red. For the first time since the elevator, I looked directly at him. I said, "Sit." He didn't argue. The color drained from his face as he realized something had shifted. I spoke calmly. "You committed insurance fraud." His mouth opened, closed. "You attempted to remove me as your spouse." His hands began to shake. "You don't know if the baby is yours." That broke him. He fell into the chair, head in his hands. "I was going to tell you," he whispered. I leaned forward. "No, you were going to replace me." His phone buzzed. Once, twice. A message from Clara. Then another. Then one from his HR department. Subject: immediate review of coverage status. He looked at me with terror. I stood. "Tomorrow, you'll take a DNA test." "And if the child is not yours?" he asked, voice cracking. I paused at the doorway. "Then you destroyed our marriage for someone else's life." 2 days later, the results arrived. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. Nathan stared at the paper like it might rearrange itself. It didn't. Clara stopped answering his calls. Ethan filed for full custody. Nathan's company suspended him pending investigation. And that night, as he slept on the couch, I opened one final folder. People think revenge is loud. It isn't. Real consequences arrive quietly, like paperwork, signatures, and silence where love used to live. Nathan didn't beg. That surprised me. He didn't cry either. He just unraveled. Over the next few days, he moved through the house like a ghost, sleeping on the couch, eating almost nothing, checking his phone compulsively as if Clara might suddenly resurrect his fantasy with an apology. She never did. The DNA results destroyed her leverage. Ethan filed for full custody and cut all financial ties. Clara disappeared from Nathan's life the same way she entered it, suddenly, leaving only damage behind. Nathan, meanwhile, had nowhere to hide. The HR investigation moved faster than I expected. Insurance fraud, false domestic partnership claims, unauthorized beneficiary changes. By Friday, Nathan was placed on indefinite administrative leave. By Monday, it became termination. He came home early that day and sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same place where, weeks earlier, I had taught piano students and believed my life was stable. "They're letting me go," he said quietly. I nodded. "They're also reporting it," he added. "There may be legal consequences." I looked at him then. Really looked. This was the man who once promised me security, honesty, and partnership. Now he couldn't even meet my eyes. I didn't raise my voice when I told him I had already spoken to a lawyer. I didn't need to. The shock did the work for me. I slid the folder across the table. Divorce papers, asset division proposal, evidence attachments. He flipped through them slowly, stopping at the highlighted sections. "You've documented everything," he whispered. "Yes," I said. "You planned this." "No," I corrected gently. "You did. I just followed the trail." The settlement was clean. No theatrics, no drawn-out battles. Nathan agreed to everything. The house, the savings, the piano studio. He didn't fight because fighting would require energy, and he had none left. The public story. People noticed. They always do. Friends asked questions, colleagues whispered. His parents called, confused and heartbroken. I didn't tell anyone the full truth. I didn't need to. The facts spoke loudly enough on their own. Stories like that don't require embellishment. Nathan moved out within 2 weeks. He packed quietly, efficiently, like a tenant who had overstayed his welcome. When he reached the door with his final box, he paused. "I never meant to hurt you," he said. I believed him. That was the saddest part. "You didn't mean to," I replied. "You just didn't care enough not to." He nodded once. Then he left. The quiet. After he was gone, the house felt different. Not empty. Clear. I repainted the walls, donated his clothes, rearranged the furniture so nothing faced the way it used to. I reopened my piano studio full-time. My students noticed the change before anyone else. "You play differently now," one of them said. I smiled. They were right. I wasn't playing to keep peace anymore. I was playing truth. 3 months later, I received one last message from Nathan, an email. No subject line, just words. He wrote about regret, about loneliness, about realizing too late that stability feels boring to those who don't know how rare it is. He asked for forgiveness. I didn't reply. Forgiveness isn't a conversation. It's a decision you make privately, or not at all. Epilogue. I ran into Clara once, at a grocery store. She looked smaller somehow, tired, worn thin by consequences. She didn't recognize me. I recognized her immediately. I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no sadness, just distance. And that's when I knew I had won. Not because they lost, but because I no longer needed them to mean anything. Some betrayals don't break you, they free you.